Now we hit. There we go. Awesome, awesome. Good morning and hello. It is Wednesday, everyone. The last Wednesday, I believe, of the month of October 2024. We're so excited to offer this amazing course today, and hopefully you are online. If you're not online live with us, you are catching the replay of starting a trucking insurance agency. Why is this important? Because insurance is just as important as understanding the trucking business, because it's all about the business of trucking, right? It's also something that we also have to partner and understand and mirror with our business. And a lot of us don't have an understanding of the importance of insurance or even what insurance is about. So we're going to offer this today, whether you're live in person with us or you're catching the replay. We hope you get some nuggets. Make sure you have a pen and paper and reach out to us if you have any questions or concerns, especially if you're on the replay. We want to hear from you, right? So we're excited again. We welcome you and we thank you so much for being in this space. And we welcome our very special guests. Thank you to all our AUTA leadership team. Good morning, everyone. Let's get rolling.
Thank you, Nicole. And just for those who haven't had the pleasure of meeting you, would you mind doing your intro as well as Autumn's intro, and then we'll go right into the presentation.
No problem, no problem. So everyone, just again, I apologize here. My name is Nicole Ward, and I'll actually show my face for this one if it would allow me to. I am the president and co-founder of African American Women Trucking Association, where our mission here is to increase the representation of African American women and men now in this industry. We are bringing you resources for your survival, resources for you to thrive and survive. And that's what this is all about. So again, if you're here live, we thank you for being in this place. Make sure you're not shy. You ask questions. That's what this is all about. This platform is just for you and for me, but make sure that we can grow and we can develop and thrive in the trucking industry. So, catching the replay, we want your questions as well. Hi, everyone. Happy to meet you.
I'm sorry, I'm having a little delay on my end, but thank you so much, Nicole. And so, if you're just joining us for the first time, this is a member and community education session. We try to vary our topics to make sure we're touching all the aspects of the logistics industry. And so, flashing in front of you is our website. We are a nonprofit based out of the Atlanta, Georgia area. We have a marketplace, lots of events, as you see scrolling across your screen. So, please be sure to check out the website at aawta.org. All right, we're going to go ahead right into the presentation. Again, the chat is open, so I'll be checking for questions, and this is kind of a overview, but we can dive in as deep as we want. I'm leaving plenty of room for some really specific Q&A. So those that are attending live, you're getting the benefit then of asking those live questions, and then we'll screen share, we'll do all that. We want this to be very applicable. So a little bit about me. My name is Lotta Love Hawkins. I am the director of education. I'm not education. Director of community engagement and drinker of coffee. And so waiting for that to kick in. And just been in the trucking insurance side now for 5 years. Came from a independent agency. My very first agency that I worked with was also an independent agency, but pretty much it was me, him, and his mom. And so I helped grow the book. And then I built my own confidence in saying, hey, I could do this too. And my sister, who's a insurance guru, she helped us get set up and started. And so now I'm just moving and sharing the wealth along with everyone else. There's plenty of room in this industry. We'll talk about those and different opportunities. And like I said, very high level at first, and then we'll go into a drill down if you have additional questions. So, starting a trucking insurance agency, there's some do's and don'ts, absolutely. Oops, and it jumped right over here. Okay, there we go. So, what we're going to talk about is just the industry. If you're not familiar with the trucking or logistics, supply chain, there's transportation, lots of different names, but it's interrelated. We're also going to talk about marketing strategies because from my seat and my experience, I actually seen something that was a little different than traditional insurance type marketing and recruitment when it came down to this sector. And then, of course, how can you continue to scale from where you are to that next level? All right, so the overviews in trucking specifically, it's an expanding demographic, to call it that, because there are so many different ways you can enter the profession. It's not just driving, it's not just brokerage. There's ownership, there's the legal side, there's the financial side, and all of this is just growing, growing, growing because of the need to get items from where they're originated to your home. You know, e-commerce is alive and well. We are right here in that season of the year. And so it's just more and more opportunities, especially for the smaller truck companies of 5 trucks or less. There are some specialized risks, however, when it comes to trucking. So this is what makes it slightly different than other types of coverage, for those of you that write insurance, like our BOPs and just even generic commercial auto. And that's because we need to understand the um, the um, the BOL, the process, the how this works, the chain of custody. That's what I was trying to say. As it pertains to the cargo coverage, we need to understand the liability coverage both on a state's. Oh, did I just blurb? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I don't know what happened to my presentation. Let's get back up here. It just went off. Okay. It just says it wants to, and then my dog wants to go. I'm pretty sure in just a second, because that's how that goes, right? All right. So, um, talking about the state as well as federal regulatory compliance issues. So it is a competitive landscape, although right now we're in a hard market as far as new entries and what that means for folks that are not into insurance just yet. It means that not everybody is accepting the new agents, the new agencies. So it's a mix, but it is starting to open up. For those of you that are following this trend, Geico just entered the market. They're not in all states yet because they're piloting. And so this is why this is really important for us as insurance professionals, as trucking professionals, because people are taking samples of what's going on in our everyday. They're trying to best understand how this really works and how they can offer protection and the things to stay away from. Just being very honest, that's all part of the underwriting. And so this is that opportunity. This is why AUTA is presenting this, is because we have to have a positive as well as productive representation in the community. We don't want to be known as those folks, right? And so that's what we're all here to kind of learn at how they're measuring, what they're looking for, and how to make sure we're putting the best foot forward. All right, I realize this is not the FMCSA's logo, but this is the best way to use it without having that, cosign, because I didn't ask them for their permission. So FMCSA stands for Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. So the website is fmcsa.gov.gov. This is the government agency that is over all the regulatory pieces on the federal level. So you're going to keep hearing me say federal, federal, federal because it's different if you only operate on the state level. Okay, and that's the difference between intra and interstate. So, talking about states, state licensing is important. Some states, such as Texas, requires technically for you to have both a state registration as well as your federal registration. Many people don't know that because they don't necessarily kind of work in those sectors. But if you were to follow like the rule book line for line, they want you to have that text dot number as well as the FMCSA USA or US DOT. And so you got to know your state specifics. Really quick blurb on this: state jurisdiction in trucking, because this is a very unique business that is moving across state lines, can be split 3 ways. So the first one is by the state in which the business is incorporated. The second one is the license or the citizenship or residency of the driver. And then the third one is where the accident or incident occurs. So when we're talking about dealing with state specific stuff on a federal level, you got to remember there's all these little nuances in regards to jurisdiction. So, especially for those of us that stay in states that are part of like a tri state, um, region, it's really possible that you can have something end up in court in three different jurisdictions. So, be mindful of that. Okay. As I'm talking about the regulatory pieces, it's constantly changing. So if you're new to the trucking industry, this is actually a great time to be in it. You'll hear a lot of moans and groans in regards to all the regulation, but the regulation is really keeping up with the times. It's really just being able to keep our roads safe because, as I said earlier, there is an increase of interest. And so you want to make sure that everybody who has an interest is also insurable, also understands those regulations and, acts accordingly. So the regulatory piece, you're going to hear a lot in trucking, and then as we go into this last point, there's even people who are out here as compliance people. And that's just to make sure that those regulatory things are followed and recognized because there's so many ways for people to do business where some rules may not apply to them and then the other way around. They may be operating in a way that a rule applies, but they're totally unfamiliar with it because they did a last minute change or a one time change to operate some in a different way. And now they're increasing their risk, to public safety as well as their own, to their drivers, to their equipment. Right. So we're going to talk a little more about the portfolio. Like I said, I'm going through this pretty quickly, but then we'll go back and do a deep dive. So if there's questions, please make sure you're jotting them down. Again, we have a very mixed group. I kind of took a little peek to just make sure I'm not talking way above anyone's head, but then also I don't want it to be like, okay, Lotta, we know what insurance is. So kind of spread out the audience. Building your portfolio. Now, these are the things as a trucking insurance agency you'll want to have. You've got to have in order to be competitive. You got to have the different types of coverages. So liability is called auto liability. That's your $1 million policies you're commonly hearing about. Um, so in regards to liability, there's two different buckets, again, on a very high level. There's what we call an admitted market, which is your top ranked insurance companies, and a non-admitted market, which they're not held to those same standards. They didn't have to put some money in reserves in order to work in the state, but they offer some savings if you're willing to take the risk on holding some of that risk yourself. So again, lower premiums, but also lower coverage. Um, then we talk about cargo. It's very, very, very important as you have a good understanding as dispatchers, as drivers, company owners, what that chain of custody means, what that BOL means. It means the authority that got it has the authority to keep it. And that's why we use that word authority, because you're either the broker, which acts in the capacity of brokering freight, which means that, they have the authority because they're bonded at $75,000 to be able to connect um, a shipper to a carrier, and they don't have to have an asset or a truck themselves. Now, that's your broker. Again, very regulated, all those protections. Now we have the carrier, which kind of falls in this weird gumbo type mix of responsibilities and such. And that's why there's a lot of advocacy on exactly let's define better what the carrier is responsible for, what they're not responsible for. And so as you're getting freight, you have to have one of those authorities, either the carrier that you're carrying it or you're brokering it. And then you are in charge of it, the care, custody, and control throughout the transit. If you lose it, you can't say someone else took it and I don't know and I'm not responsible because it's kind of like a sign off. You are signing off that you're responsible. When your drivers pick up the freight and they just quickly sign just so they could hurry up and get off, onto the road rather, they're also saying everything's good. So you can't come back later and say, oh, you know what? It wasn't. You just had someone sign off to say that things were good. And so if there's questions, they need to be asked before you just sign off because these are legal documents. And in the case of a claim, that's the documentation we're looking for. Not that so and so said or oh I thought. We're looking for documentation. And then physical damage coverage. Who can even get physical damage coverage, which is the protection for the asset itself, the physical part of it. So there's physical part, again, the truck itself, the side of the truck, I'm not counting tires for a specific reason, and those who do insurance kind of know why, but the parts of the truck, the physical part of it. This is not a requirement by the FMCSA because they're not in the business of running a business in that scope. They're not in the business on it what happens to you if your truck just can't get on the road anymore. Now they're in the business of safety. They will fine you and flag you for, broken windshields, busted tail lights, brake lines and stuff. But that is up to you as a business to make sure you're covered and such. And so that's where physical damage is one of the coverages you'll need to have a good understanding with because you need to see who has the insurable interest for that. Specialty products. So, as I said earlier, trucking is very diverse. Anyone who tells you otherwise hasn't really got into it. So, yes, we start off with the dry van, which is pretty much almost the pictures we see here. But even if we start off before the trailer part of it, we have power only. Some people operate with just the tractor trailer. And then other than tractor trailers, you have pickups and cargo vans. And now there's smaller vehicles, less than 10,000 GVW, gross vehicle weight, that are starting to enter this market because the demand is getting higher and higher and higher for that final mile. So each one of these niches has their own specialty and nuances. There's things that box trucks have to consider that maybe a hot shot or a pickup wouldn't have to consider. And then there's the difference between the CDL drivers and non-CDL drivers, and it all depends upon weight and specialty. Okay, weight and specialty. So it's a incorrect statement to say if you have a box truck, you don't need a CDL. And that's one people get in trouble with a lot because they don't understand when you're riding that line of that 26,001 pounds, you can't go over. There's no grace. You have to have your CDL or not. And so those things considered. Risk management. This is the opportunity in which the insurance professional serves. So you'll hear as the terms between logistics and supply chain and trucking are kind of interchangeable. They are on a high level, but when you get down to the specifications, that's when you start saying, okay, so interstate commerce of commercial vehicles, where does that fall? Are you talking more about just commercial auto, very broad and general for like a catering company? That's kind of a different type of setup. And so knowing how and what the risks are, depending on the setup of the company, is vital. And offering these consultations is really what's going to be different with how you get your customers and clients as an insurance agency because we're all going more or less to the same sources. We're all going to get the quote from a progressive, from, a canal, but it's how we present the risk to our underwriter that gets us the difference in rates and also to the underwriter on just if it's acceptable or not. If we're missing those major details, we're doing a disjustice to both our client as well as to our other client, which is the insurance agency or company themselves. And pricing, as we talk about pricing, this is the part that I'm actually kind of excited to see because although I've only been in the industry on this end for 5 years, I've seen firsthand because I got to know the owners and got to kind of hear some of that conversation of watching some of this technology come into play. Um, Very much like the mortgage industry, traditional underwriting for trucking usually was done from the underwriter. It was a risk that was sent in, usually by email and before email by an application. And there's still a lot of companies that hold true to that in insisting that their applications be done on accords. And we'll talk about that here briefly. Um, but more and more are starting to do some on the glass. And what that's called is, again, having a portal, having the technology where you can get an instant or near instant quote right then and there. This is probably one of the most sensitive things that our audience doesn't fully understand, that these quotes don't just come out the air. As I mentioned, a lot goes into the consideration of how the company is running. How long have they been in business? What is their credit? How many people? How many experienced people? All those are very important factors in the underwriting process. So it's very difficult, but it's getting more and more streamlined to be able to, okay, this thing does not want to cooperate with me, to be able to offer that instantly. And so going into that, just again, the online forums to be able to do it, it's also really important to have relationships. Just like the job market, some of your better freight is never advertised. It's given. It's already got, a relationship. And so that's where connecting to associations such as ATA and networking and meeting the people in all the different various roles becomes very important to you. Because although you may be looking at trucking insurance, being a risk manager, you have to know how all these roles fit together. You can't just only know how to quote because you won't know what to quote. And so there's some unique challenges of the different operations. There's some things that you have to do. So that's why it's not a one size fits all solution, but it's customized for their needs and the way they're operating. Also, a big point that you'll hear a lot with the pains of smaller trucking companies is that these large agencies, the dot coms and such, to not use any carrier names, um, they're not responding to them because they're looking at them and they're like, they're really not my appetite, and that is a technical word. There's not the key or the ideal customer. So we'll get around to getting their quote. And time is money in logistics. And so if you're finding yourself trying to get quotes and just notice, why is no one ever getting back with me, or why is it taking so long? There's either questions that come up with your profile that need to be answered, that the agent, an experienced agent, should know to answer on the front end versus to go back and forth of, okay, so what is your DOT number? They should have got that in the beginning. Why didn't they do that? You know, um, and just verifying the information that shows up on all these different reports. So again, here's our website, auta.org. All right, I'm doing good on time. Again, I'm going through the presentation and then we'll go into the deeper dive. Can you use your business credit? Okay, to apply? Yes, you can, but it's still depending on the age and strength of your business credit going to ask for a personal guarantee. I actually have a panel that I'm putting together on equipment financing because I just helped someone with a deal yesterday, and I learned a little trick of the trade in regards to intra and interstate. So definitely want her to present on that. Let's talk about marketing and sales strategies. As transportation is literally all over the place. Your customers may not even be geographically close to you, more and more agencies are going away from that brick and mortar to an online presence. It's because it makes it more convincing, or not convincing, but more convenient for their customers to be able to log into portals, do their own search, some of those pain points that you might be experiencing in the marketplace, and speed and transparency of this information. You know, um, there are some people, as things had taken, longer to verify, that would run around with a cert, with a certificate of insurance, with no insurance. They didn't make any other payments. They're waiving this receipt that's old and invalid. And so being able to check in real time is the focus of FMCSA, as well as cross check with all their other systems on if this is valid information. Because again, once you're on the web, you now become global, and there's lots of different people. Also, real quick, and then definitely opening it up to discussion. Social media. Um, I've been following this just to see if this was a fluke or a real thing in regards to where most people are converting from their first interest to actual startup and moving forward with their trucking agencies. And the statistics of their initial exposures coming from social media are really high. I don't have all those numbers right now. I'm gathering them and just trying to, even like I said, is see if it's in different demographics and such. But many people are exposed to trucking through social media. And if you're on social media, you can see the differences in facts and fiction. And I'll just kind of leave it there. So it's really important that you have a social media or some type of digital presence um, to get your clients from, but then you also spend the time, quality time, and resources in a professional manner in order to take them out of that social media crowd mentality of knowing that this is their individualized policy. And so, with that being said, another great strategy for our trucking insurance professionals is to become a thought leader. Again, with the diversity of the different types of equipment, it's plenty of room for you to become the dump truck insurance expert. You can be the hot shot expert. We can add whatever adjective in front of it, but there's plenty of room um, for everybody, because there's so many changes that are being made, and there is a large disconnect with the people who are making the policies and the ones who are buying the policies. Because again, it's supposed to show real usage, but if everyone keeps going to this cookie cutter pie in the sky. Yeah, yeah, I do that. And they're really not doing that type of setup. Um, the policies are not truly covering the risk. And so this is really important, once again, with that risk management part for our agents to dig and do a deeper dive. All right, last but not least, let's talk about growth and scaling, and then we'll go and answer questions. And I'll show you some resources here with our final 30 minutes. Want to make this again interactive, more of a workshop than a sit and listen. And so, keys to scaling. Trucking is a high touch niche. High touch meaning that, like with life insurance, ideally someone buys it, they may not ever really call you again because they just have it in place. The billing is automated, all that, and you don't have to constantly talk to someone about their policy. That is not the case in trucking. Um, I think there was a time where some of my customers, we talked almost daily. And so, although it shouldn't even be that large of amount of contact. It is something to where this market expects COIs to be more or less instant. They're not always, especially if there's a change being made. And again, the changes have to be processed. That's not always an instant process either. So it's the way that you're able to stay ahead of your claims, how the policies are issued, as well as billing. um, you have to have systems in place, if not an automated system, have a good paper and pencil type, system to be able to be aware of where your clients are and what their needs in real time. Then we go into talent development. You kind of have to have a passion, to be honest. I know some people who could care less, to be honest, about trucking specifics. So they just ask the minimum questions, and you get just a very blanket type policy. And then on the back end, when a claims happens, you know, the public always looks at, oh, the insurance company is always looking for a loophole. And it's not that they're looking for a loophole, but they're looking to see if you're compliant to the policy. So if no one takes the time to break down the policy, explain what it is, the defense of I didn't know that that was in my policy or was not in my policy. And it's usually the case of was not, because like I said, these are customized policies. So more often it's what's not covered than what is covered. Trucking is also a scheduled policy, which means if specific VINs are not declared on that policy, there's no coverage. There's no switch around. I'm going to drive this other truck today versus this truck today without notifying your insurance company. So, once again, having people who are detailed oriented, yourself being detailed oriented while being able to manage a bunch of tasks is key. Strategic partnerships. So the stakeholders are not just, as I said earlier, not just drivers, not just owners, not just freight brokers. There is a whole ecosystem of people who touch the industry. So from your mechanics to your dispatchers to even wellness professionals, everybody has a part in this overall success of the company. So as it pertains to insurance, again, there's so many different types of insurance. The P&C side, the life and health side, you can go deeper and just do bonds because there's a lot of permits that require bonds. And you'll see that there's certain industries that really are tight with um, transportation, such as construction. A lot of their stuff is going to be really tight in regards to their needs and the volume that they use one another. And last but not least, be prepared for the change. If you're one that's kind of a little phobic of technology, this may not be a good fit because as we're heading towards the age of autonomous trucks as well as increased telematics, this is the real time data that is being gathered consistently. The dash cams, again, real time data, and how the data is stored and analyzed and kept and protected is really a huge focus on how this moves forward. All right, so this last part here is just again to learn more. These presentations are open community presentations. Um, it's part of a member benefit. Members get additional benefits on top of that, but this is just community awareness. We're stronger as a community, all of us together. And so if you have any other questions or are looking into some membership discounts, you can reach out to me at my email address, lotta@otta.org. And once again, this is our website. So now I'm going to open it up to questions and I'll even kind of lead with some questions because I know that was a lot of information in a short amount of time. But if there was an immediate question, I want to go ahead and take some time to address that right now. Are there any immediate questions?
So I didn't have an immediate question, but I did have a comment based off of something that you said that kind of resonated with me. Um, this is Nicole Ward, president and co-founder of African American Women Trucking Association, and I talk about some of the reasons why Ottawa was created was because there was a lack of understanding and education and centralization of education, and so you providing some of this information is just kind of refreshing because it kind of solidifies that I wasn't crazy. When I started entering trucking, I literally was looking for an insurance company to insure a carrier that was less than 2 years old. Now, if you're in this business, you are probably giggling and laughing
Mhm.
because you know quite impossible. There's a few carriers, and we won't mention their name as they don't endorse us, that provide that coverage. But even to understand and to get to that point was like hell and high water. I was filling out so many applications, and people weren't calling me back. And just like you
Mhm.
were saying, a lot of time is of the essence when it comes down to this business. I already had potential contracts that were waiting, but because of connections, however, I didn't have insurance and I couldn't get anyone to call me back. And so I just appreciate you kind of give us an insight of things that underwriting is looking for and some of the things that the insurance companies particularly are looking for, and just having like an online presence, how important that is. For, when they're doing their research, maybe that's part of what they're doing just to determine if you're a legitimate business. So I just wanted to
Absolutely.
kind of make that comment based off of some of the things that you said. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And yes, they are looking at the online presence. All of this is free domain. And as you get to really understand more about um, data privacy and protection, that is the next big frontier. Who gets information, what's public, what's private? And many of us are giving away all the business, aka social media. So your social media feed is up for grabs. If you post that you've got all this money, all these trucks, all these homes, and then you're sued, and the attorney goes in there and says, "Oh, what is that address? Oh, let me look at this. Let me look at that." You've really just opened it up for yourself. I want to introduce you also to this website here, which is Safer. So if you're not familiar with it, you can Google it, but I have it kind of tabbed, and I'll share it in the chat. And I'm going to show you a little in depth. You may kind of be a little like, wow, I didn't really see how someone would interpret this. We're going to play that game. I do see your question here, Jeff, about how far in advance would you recommend for someone to look if they're looking to switch? So, my immediate gut reaction to looking to switch is, why are you switching? What's going on? So, that's a pause right there. And there is a way I'll be showing you here with this website. And you'll notice this is a website. Everyone, I would encourage, just go ahead and bookmark it right now. There are no passwords to this website. It is free domain. And so anything found here can be used in any kind of way. Um, so switching, it depends on the circumstance. There's a lot of companies that won't allow you to switch midterm. These policies are annual policies, 12 good months together. We married for a whole year. Um, and if you're planning to lease someone onto your insurance, should everyone that lease on have their own policy? So as I was mentioning earlier, there's different types of policies. So when we talk about liability, only the authority can have the liability. And we'll go into that a little deeper in here. Physical damage, only those with the insurable interest, which means the owners or the lien holders of the equipment can actually take out that coverage. Because we can't just go around and point at pretty trucks and say, "Ooh, that's mine," and write down VIN numbers and say, "I want to insure it." You have to have a reason to why it's beneficial to be covered. Are you protecting a financial interest? Are you protecting your operational interests? And so when we talk about the policies, I'll go into that a little more detail. Any other questions or comments before I do the deep dive into Safer? And if anyone had a specific number you wanted to use, this is all public record. So I always have to do that disclosure because I've done some recordings before and people were like, "You just took my name and did this and did that." It's public record. It's public record, free domain. So there are three ways you can look into this company snapshot. You can have the actual DOT number. They're actually making changes to where you're not able to see because right now, as you have experienced, anybody who has a number that starts with a 3 or a 4, they just started. They're new. So people who have a 1 in front of their DOT number, there are OGs, and that's when people start looking for that. They're going to mix it up here coming up. I don't know exactly when, but they just said that they're going to mix up the order of the DOT numbers. MC number. A DOT and an MC are not the same thing. MC stands for motor carrier, and MX, for your record, stands for Mexico. And MC is a number that is assigned because of this particular freight. So all hazmat has MCs, or that you cross state lines. If you're not crossing state lines, you don't have an MC. There's also some confusion on which one. I'm not going to go too deep. Well, I'm just going to say it, and if y'all want me to go deeper, just let me know. Um, which one's transferable? Is it your DOT or MC? And so there's some talk out there because people were selling companies, but they didn't sell the right part of their company. And so just kind of keep that in mind. I want to bring more details as I kind of go in there because it's highly a litigious area where some people are kind of saying one thing over the other. So I don't want to really get too far into my opinions on it. We can definitely do another course and I'll have some facts so you can make your own judgment. And then lastly, but probably the most dangerous, is the alpha search. So talking about the alpha search, I'm just going to put the word Texas in. When you hit Texas, every registered broker and carrier is going to pop up. So you see how detailed or how long this list is. So sorry for the scrolling in advance. Going to the top. I'm just going to randomly pick this one, A&M. This one's kind of standing out for a couple of reasons, but I'm just going to randomly pick this one. All right. So let me make this larger, and I'm just going to do a quick rundown of what I interpret. Again, this is just me seeing some things and seeing these are the questions I would ask and poke at to my client. So the first thing I notice is all blue. I love it. No red. We making money. So you're active. You're currently active. I do see a DOT number, and I see one entity type right here. They're just one entity type. This is the best type of client because they're doing one thing at a time. When you have the ones that have carrier slash broker slash IEP, I don't know what you're doing. It's very hard for me to cover what you're doing when you're doing the most. Okay. Now, can you have different things? Absolutely. But separate those businesses so they can be, so it could be clear that this business is the carrier. This business is the broker. This business is the equipment provider. Okay. Can you be a broker with assets? Absolutely. Brokers don't have to not have a truck. Some of them, that is their preference. But I'll just share with you too. It's really hard for you to be the checks and balances when you both hold the check and the balance. Your credibility kind of goes to the wayside with that. So what does that mean? If I'm the broker and I say I'm out here, getting direct shipments and stuff from, Walmart, Home Depot, all those guys and girls, and I'm giving out freight. I need help. I need capacity. If you're working with me and you know that I have my own trucks, do you think I'm giving you good freight or bad freight? Okay. I'll leave that to public opinion. But that is a perception of brokers that have assets. Why do brokers have assets? Because they need it to go. They don't want their reputations to go to mud. Um, Brokers with assets usually kind of run more on a contractual basis. They're not really out there for hire. um, because they are very closely related to 3PLs, 4PLs. Different topic. I don't want to go too far off there because the carrier is actually, if you want to think of it in the terms of a hierarchy, is your top dog. Your carrier has the equipment. Your carrier has the most responsibilities. Your carrier is the beginning and the end. Okay. So now reading the rest of the profile. See the DOT number, and I see this important date, the MCS 150. The 150 is the date of the last change. I can't tell what was changed, but I just know that a change was filed back in May. If this date said 10/22, I'm definitely asking, what did you just do? And if they don't have an answer or again get really defensive, there's more to that. So use that MCS 150 date as a conversation piece. Now, with this being last done in May, it looks like they're probably running pretty consistent, no changes. On the right hand side of that MCS 150, it's also the same form to which they report their mileage. This is connected to revenues, their IFTAs, and all this other kind of stuff. I'll leave that again more for a financial conversation, but we see this one was reported at 37,000 for the year of 2023. They hadn't moved a lot. That's low mileage, especially based on what we're going to see here later in this profile. All right, so the next one is the authority status is authorized for property. Property is what you want because you're hauling cargo. The other definition would be passengers. So you're either hauling things or people, one of the two. This one has an MC, and as I said earlier, MC is a quick way of saying they go across state lines or they're carrying hazmat. So we'll look into that here in just a moment. Then there's the legal name. Legal names need to have their corporate identifiers. Okay, so if this just said A&M Logistics of Texas, that is what we call improper because I don't know if they're an LLC, if they're an INC, if they're a sole proprietor. Yeah, there we go. If they're a partnership, that is the purpose of filing for those different types of incorporations because there's different tax protections as well as legal protections. So in order for it to be complete, you have to include it in this field. Okay. DBAs cannot be incorporated. So it should never say A&M Logistics of Texas Limited Liability Company, DBA, A&M Logistics of Texas, INC. A DBA is just doing business as. It is not a blanket corporation. Okay, that we'll go into that another time, another place. Physical versus mailing address. One moment. The joys of working from home. All right, so the physical versus mailing address. Why are there two? What are the two? Okay, physical is a garaging address. One moment.
And
I would
as
think I had a huge dog. I'm sorry. You would
no
think I
problem, I
did.
was about to fill in.
Thank you. Sorry. Um, so the physical address versus a mailing address, why are they different? Can they be different? What is the sensitivity of them? The policy has to follow your physical, aka garaging address. Zip codes matter in trucking. It's a statistical thing. So if you live in an urban environment, Fifth Ward, Houston, Texas, Harris County, your rates are different than if you lived out in Cleveland, Ohio. Or no, not even Cleveland, Ohio, Cleveland, Texas. Just ain't nobody over there. So it's off the highway. Zip code matters. Now, what's catching my eye is that this is the same address. And I know a little bit about Red Oak, Texas, if you guys are familiar with this address. And the thing that this is telling me is to Google it. Anyone want to guess what we might find when we Google this address? Ah, absolutely. A residence. Pretty nice residence. So, do you want the public to realize this is where you live? Um, I'll share in another resource for us how to blur your address from Google Maps. But for right now, we see it all. Sometimes you could really look real good. I think that's a couch right here, huh? I get nosy like that. But we have a physical and a mailing address for this person. We don't know yet who they are, other than A&M Logistics. Okay. So your physical address needs to be the garaging address. It matches your policy. Your mailing address could be a PO box or a virtual address. This is just again mailing wherever you get it. Whenever you see the ones in different states, it just asks, it's a question to be asked. Why are you receiving a mail in South Dakota? You know, just asking. It doesn't have a huge impact, but it's a great thing to ask. The phone numbers may or may not be the actual phone numbers because anyone who is on this registry is getting a million calls a day. Um, Again, the phone numbers you may just want to verify, but this is what we want to look at. The rest of this sheet right here. 3 power units, 5 drivers. Why are there 2 more drivers than there are equipment? You're an authority for hire. Cool. You're going across state lines. We knew that because we saw the MC number. And this is the stuff that you're self proclaiming that you are taking. Big pause on that because this is self reported. This is not what their cargo policy says, per se. Okay. The cargo policy is also self reported, but it's the thing that's going to give you insurance coverage. If you went on here, changed it to motor vehicles because you want a opportunity to haul a car and then go and change it back and you didn't consult with the insurance agency, number one, if anything happened, you didn't have coverage. And number two, even the brokers or the better brokers that know how to read a COI, a certificate of insurance, will be able to say, hey, I don't see this coverage on here. The other thing that's standing out about this profile is that they wrote the word sand. Okay, there is an other field when you're filling this out that you can type stuff in, but my question, again, all this is questions. Why did you write something when you could have used a category? That requires more underwriting because you went out your way to say sand is different than bulk, is different than equipment um, and construction. So, being that this is in Houston, this is probably someone who's dealing with possibly a dump truck or fracking, which is the oil and gas stuff. All right. Notice all I'm doing is just going further down this page. No sign, nothing else, nothing else. So we have 13 inspections. They've been pulled over 13 times. We're going to look at this here, and I'm speeding this up a little bit. We're going to look at this. Let me just make sure I am not going to be terribly late. Okay, I'm good. I'm sorry. Okay, just had to make sure. Where we could see 13 inspections. There was 13 citations for the driver. They were out of service 3 times for a vehicle violation, 1 time for the driver, and there's the national averages. So if you're below the national average, you're doing good. But as you see with their vehicle, they're above the national average. This is an increased price. So when you hear about price increases for insurance, when you hear about uninsurable risk, because the worst thing that can happen is not just a high price, it's an absolute decline. We will not touch this. Go somewhere else. And that is actually pretty common. These are the reasons why. And then they also report fatalities. fatalities and anything that kind of brought back up. I hope you're also looking at the time frames. Certain things are reported within 24 months, others is 36. And I can't remember where 36 just came from, but this one still says 24. But for your loss runs, we look back 3 years. So real quickly on here, I just want to show you how this goes into further detail. I don't like going to it. Well, I guess I could right here. No, I didn't want to. You know how you get used to just kind of doing things your way. So I always go up to the top to these two choices right here. And now let me first go into licensing and insurance, and then I'm going to end it on the SMS reports. If you have questions, again, type them in the chat as we get ready to close up here. All right, so it's just open database, ask me to verify if I'm a robot. Today I'm not. All right, so now, let me make this larger. This is what I see. This is the screen for insurance professionals that we have to match to. If we have a filing, which is the thing that reports to FMCSA that does not match this side, okay, this side, and that's how they'll talk to you and say, this side of the profile, they'll reject it. So always make sure you're in the L&I, the licensing and insurance side. So when the things that they could reject is this name is different. So notice there's a comma right here. Technically, your policy has to have the exact same thing. The ampersand, which is that and sign, and spaces, which is really why I hate when people do this piece, but again, personal preference. So it's A space, ampersand space, M space, logistics. It is that technical. I had where we were back and forth because I forgot a colon. And it was just like, oh my God. But now you're costing someone money because things have to be delayed. Changes on this profile are only updated once a day. So anything updated today gets updated on the system for tomorrow. Can't do anything else about it. So again, your business address and the phone numbers. There's an active authority, which we've seen. Yes, they're for property. The rest of these should say no. They're not hauling people. They're not a household goods mover, which is a moving company. They don't take their own personal stuff, and they're not contracted freight. Not dedicated, but contracted, meaning that they're only running for their own company. Okay, right here, each state is different in regards to how they file their filings. So just because it says 750 doesn't mean, or on file 750, doesn't mean that that's the extent of their insurance. They could actually have $1 million policy, but what this is literally saying is that they've met the requirement. Here at the end, we'll see active insurance. So this is a current Geico policy. So I'm looking at the dates. This was as of July. And so that policy number is the actual policy number. So if someone doesn't know their policy number, this is where you find it. So this is active insurance. I look at insurance history. This is actually a good example. You see what I'm seeing? It's a rap sheet. That's what I even call them when I see it this way. So I see they started off with Progressive. Progressive is a open market. A little bit of everybody can get to Progressive. They went with Mojave. Mojave is no longer here. Everspan. They went with Coverwell. Then they went back to Progressive. Then they went to Coverwell. Then they went to Berkshire. Then they went to Canal. So they were doing a little better right here. And then they're with an RRG. We'll save that for another conversation, but this is not an upgrade. Okay. Also, what do you see here in this history? Money is an issue. So first 3 months, they replaced it. That's usually because they missed the payment and had to have it rewritten. But the policy number stayed the same, so it wasn't a hard cancel. So you see how I'm like tracking? Then we have a gap in the policy number, or not gap, but a change in the policy number. And that was just in that same time frame. So then they kept the policy until Christmas. Then they got canceled. Then they didn't come back until first of the year. They stayed around till summer. and you can kind of see this history. I wouldn't loan them anything. Okay, would you? They don't keep their policy open. And you can tell that here. This is definitely part of underwriting because I would not dare try to get them on with Great West. I would get laughed at. And so these are the things that this is telling us. And as you get more experienced with the different markets, you're able to kind of see who's what, who's rated, who's not rated, all that other stuff. Other real quick tabs right here, because these are live links, just the authority history. So they started back in 2019, but they didn't do anything for almost 2 years. So they finally got up and going in 21. So if you're helping people set up, the best thing for you to do is help them set up to be ready to roll in 90 days. If they're not ready to roll in 90 days, meaning insurance, truck, drivers, availability, time, don't do this the service of creating this right here for them because this is a negative thing. People see that you're not following through. Revocations, if there are any revocations, that's where you get shut down. You click on there and they don't have any revocations. So they keep kind of coming back in the nick of time. Um, and then we talked about insurance history. And if they were rejected, it'll show up here too. They probably didn't have any rejections because they had all that on here. All right, so that is their current situation. That's who they are right now. Let's look at some of their SMS results. So all I'm doing is backspacing here to this little blue screen once we pulled them up. Going to SMS results, doing click your data is just kind of a habit of mine, but I just do it so it'll stick. You could always send this to your client. So if you're doing compliance, this is actually really great to send because there's no arguing with this. This is the information we're all looking at. These are called our 7 deadly sins. We'll talk about that another time and place. But where I'm going down is my violation summary. Okay. From a brief high level, I'm able to kind of see where they have the most trouble. So hours of service, which is very common, failure to have their duty status. So again, with hours of service, they probably have no training. They didn't have an ELD. Mud flaps, brake hoses, windshield. So the equipment is shoddy, and so is the maintenance records. And you can see all this right here on the side. So if you have resources to help them maintain a better vehicle, or again, you do training for um, hours of service, which is outside of the trucking insurance scope, but it's back into that risk manager bucket. This is how you can help your person. So let me show you this last thing. When you go into the actual inspections and you click on it, this is real reporting. And what do we find here? We find the actual equipment. I used to do some recovery work in my past. It's really easy to find people when you have a VIN number. Okay, so we got plates and a VIN. People can look for you. And like I said, with that whole social media posting and all that other kind of stuff, I'm gathering the resources to show that you're worth suing. You have assets. What can we get to make this worth everyone's time? All right. So yes, definitely tells a story. So this is it. So speaks to the lack of freight. Yes, definitely the mileage piece. They're not keeping up, and because their safety looks horrible, I'm pretty sure this truck does not look nice. And that's what your shippers are looking at. When we put our nice product in the back of this truck that looks like crap, that smells like crap, I'm sorry for saying that word, do we think it's going to get there in pristine condition? If they can't take care of their truck, what makes you think they'll take care of your stuff? So clean trucks, you guys and girls, important too. All right, that is the end of the presentation. Sorry for going over in time, but any last minute questions? And I love to always get feedback from our audience just to see um, if there was any points that were really gray. All of this was useful, not useful. If we can kind of do a round robin here, and I will start with Miss Carrie. If you give us just some feedback of what you learned and what you would like to comment about the presentation.
Sure, sure. This is Carrie with the Independent Insurance Agents of Texas. And I think the review of the SAFER website and the level of detail that's provided there and how to take what's there on the website and utilize it and make it meaningful so that good decisions can be made and decisions about the pre-qualification of the carrier and get a true picture of what's going on makes all the difference in the world. So thank you for doing that. Also, for insurance agents focusing on trucking, again, education is absolutely critical. Getting our license is the first step, but seeking out classes like this and webinars that are specific to trucking will make all the difference, because the more knowledge we have as agents, the better job we can do addressing the exposures of our carriers. So thank you for that too. Also, guys, even though I am with the Texas Association, know that those that are domiciled in other states, for independent agents domiciled in other states, each state has a local association to support and advocate for independent insurance agents, and they provide education and all kinds of membership benefits. For example, Georgia, you're looking at iiag.org. For Texas, it's iiat.org. Again, to reach out for anything that you guys might need. But again, education is everything. Thanks, Lotta.
Thank you, Carrie, and thank you for that information. Yes, we're all connected, you guys. Like I said, you'll hear many times of why are the insurance people learning about this? Because when those COI requests come in, you need to be kind of aware. Okay, so why is someone asking for something from an auto hauler and you're not supposed to be hauling autos? That's a conversation, because in the world of claims, when something happens, you can't fix it. You can't add the coverage at that time. And the first thing that claims professionals will tell you is go talk to your agent, and you are the agent. James, did you have any reflections, questions, comments for the presentation?
Yeah, hello everybody. Now really now just on transit just catching up and then say yes to settle down. So for how be it, I can see kind of following up with every bit of the educative and informative information that you guys are really dishing out. Yeah.
Thank you, James. I appreciate that. And like I said, we're trying our best to make sure we have a diversity of topics just so people are able to better identify where, their entry points are. And we all come from different, experiences. So thank you for being here today. Jeff, you have any comments, questions, or concerns?
I never have any concerns. But I will say that this was fantastic. I definitely learned something new. As someone that dispatches um, general freight, it was great to see how the explanation of their safer score breaks down and tells a story. And that's something that I can use when I'm onboarding other carriers or new carriers and let them know, like, hey, I see this picture and this is what I bring to the table to help you improve on that picture of what I see. So great presentation as always, and yeah, let's keep them coming. I love it.
Absolutely, and thank you. And again, this is free public information. And so definitely take hold of it, share it with the clients, because this is their story being told on the internet. And, these are the things that are being thought. And it's up to them to articulate any differences to say, well, I understand I had challenges in the past with the hours, and we're getting mentoring right now. We've bought an ELD, those type of things. So thank you for sharing. And MD Financial Solutions. I didn't get a name for MD Financial Solutions. If you had a comment or question. Okay. Well, I'm going to yield back to Nicole for our close, and thank you guys for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time for attending this amazing course. I want to say that this is the thing, that education is what's important, especially if you're growing your business or you're in this business or you're trying to understand your business. The mere fact that that Safer score the Safer website is an amazing tool that could be utilized, just like Jeff was saying, as a dispatcher. It's something that you can use to paint the picture to help your carrier understand exactly where they are and what's being viewed, and what the picture and the story is saying behind the scenes. So we appreciate all that information. Joining ATA, this is some of the benefits, guys, providing you these resources, especially if you're new in the industry, you're new in the insurance industry, and you're trying to gain access and entry to the commercial resources, or getting on the side with commercial insurance. These are some of the tools that you need to understand how to utilize. So again, we thank you, Otto. We thank you, lot of love, Hawkins and Team AutoJust, for providing these type of resources to make sure that we're able to develop and thrive in this industry. Again, I am Nicole Ward. I'm your president and co-founder of African American Women Trucking Association. We thank you so much for taking the time to be on this class live or catching the replay. Make sure you reach out to us for any additional questions, concerns, comments, feedbacks. We're here for it all.